Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the latest updates on the border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, a situation that has caught international attention. Surprisingly, even Donald Trump has stepped in, calling on both countries to cease fire and resolve their differences peacefully. In this video, I'll explain what's happening, why it matters, and what both sides have said, all in clear, simple English to help you stay informed and improve your listening skills. Let's get into it.
Yeah, it's definitely a high-stakes intervention. And, well, pretty unusual, too. It immediately makes you think there are deeper layers here. We're not just looking at, the immediate money pressures, but these really long-standing conflicts that have just been simmering for, well, decades. It's all coming together now.
Sure.
We'll try and untangle those threads in this deep dive.
Okay, so let's unpack this because the news that really took everyone by surprise, the real bombshell, was Donald Trump's announcement. And he made it from his Scottish golf course, Trump Turnberry, over in Turnberry. I mean, picture this. He goes on Truth Social, his platform, and announces, he used all caps, for stop and peace, that he'd personally brokered an immediate ceasefire. Between Thailand and Cambodia, he said both nations had, quote, agreed to immediately meet and quickly work out a ceasefire and ultimately peace. This wasn't some slow diplomatic thing. It apparently came after these urgent phone calls he made, like around midnight local time, to Hun Manet, the Cambodian PM in Phnom Penh, and Thailand's acting PM, Phumtham Wachayachai. It just seems incredibly fast and definitely unconventional.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is how quickly Thailand responded, or at least confirmed it in principle. Acting Prime Minister Phumtham did publicly say, yes, Thailand agreed to the ceasefire, in principle. But and this is the really crucial bit, the caveat he added, that Thailand wanted to see sincerity from Cambodia.
Right.
That one word, sincerity, it's not just like a polite thing to say. In diplomacy, it speaks volumes. It points to this really deep, pre-existing distrust between them. It suggests that, okay, maybe you can agree on paper or over the phone, but the real problem is this basic lack of faith in what the other side actually intends to do. So that adds this really important layer of, well, nuance to what looks like a super quick diplomatic win. It kind of implies that real peace needs more than just stopping the shooting. It needs actual commitment, trust, and that seems to have worn pretty thin.
And that speed you mentioned, it feels like it was absolutely critical here, wouldn't you say? Because this
Right.
wasn't just high-level calls out of the blue for purely peaceful reasons. Trump directly tied these ceasefire talks to something much bigger, getting trade talks back on track. He actually said he was looking to resume trade talks, but then flat out stated it wasn't appropriate to do until such time as the fighting stops. So it wasn't just mediating. He was using some pretty serious leverage to get them to the table.
Exactly. We're talking direct, significant economic pressure. The kind that, frankly, not many other global figures could just apply so personally and so quickly. These U.S. reciprocal tariffs, basically, tariffs the U.S. puts on in response to things these countries do, were huge. We're talking 36% for Thailand, and an even bigger hit, 49% for Cambodia. And they were literally about to kick in on August 1st. That was just days after Trump stepped in. So without some kind of new deal, U.S. companies importing stuff from there would suddenly face this massive, immediate tax hike. Just think about the impact that would have. Instant jump in prices for consumers, maybe inflation effects, a huge threat to their ability to sell goods in the U.S. Investor confidence would plummet, and you're looking at livelihoods destroyed. Potentially hundreds of thousands of jobs in really key export sectors for both countries.
Wow. Okay, so if we break that down, Trump basically wielded these tariffs like a big economic hammer.
Yeah.
He turned this looming financial penalty into a really powerful, immediate reason to make peace, making a deal incredibly attractive, maybe even urgent, for both Thailand and Cambodia, way beyond just diplomatic talk. It's very, very direct leverage.
Absolutely. And if you connect that to the wider geopolitical stuff, it fits perfectly with Trump's, well, his long-stated goals, particularly his desire, which he's mentioned often, for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's claimed before he successfully mediated in other tense spots like India, Pakistan, and he's shown frustration with ongoing conflicts like Ukraine and Gaza, where maybe his efforts haven't produced those kinds of direct headline results. This approach also really highlights his preference for bilateral talks, just direct chats between two countries, rather than getting bogged down in international courts or those big multilateral diplomatic setups, which he's often criticized. This way, he can sort of bypass the slower, maybe more consensus-based ways traditional diplomacy works. He relies instead on that direct leverage and very personalized negotiation. It's very much an America First style of tackling global conflicts.
Okay, right. So we've got the the high-stakes diplomacy calling from a golf course in Scotland and this undeniable economic muscle being flexed. But what about the actual gritty reality on the ground? Because like you said, this isn't just about midnight calls and Truth Social posts, is it? What was really going on when those calls were actually being made?
Yeah, that raises a really critical question, doesn't it? But what was happening right there on the border? At the exact time Trump was making these calls, the conflict was already on day 3. And reports, reliable ones like from the BBC, were painting a pretty grim picture. 33 soldiers already killed, and thousands of civilians displaced, fleeing their homes on both sides, trying to find shelter from, the fighting. And what makes it even more complicated is you have these completely different stories from each side about who started this latest round. Thailand was saying the Cambodian army used drones for spying, which is a big deal, violating airspace and trust. But Cambodia said no. Thai troops moved way too close to these ancient Khmer Hindu temples, breaking existing agreements about keeping the area clear around these sites. So it wasn't like a clear-cut case of aggression from one side. Both had their own narratives, their own justifications.
And this is where the plot really thickens, because you have Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet publicly saying hours before that Cambodia was ready for an unconditional ceasefire, which sounds like he was accepting Trump's deal, right? But then reports coming out after Trump's call told a very different story. Like at 4:30 a.m., then again at 6:40 a.m., sources like Thai TV and NBT Connect were still reporting Cambodian shelling. And heavy artillery fire, they specifically mentioned BM-21 rockets. Those are multiple rocket launchers. They can cause a lot of damage hitting civilian areas in Thailand's Surin province. That ongoing fighting definitely seems to contradict the idea of an immediate unconditional ceasefire. Makes you wonder what was really agreed, or maybe if the message even got down to the troops on the front line that quickly.
You're absolutely right. That continued fighting right after these high-level agreements were supposedly made, that just feeds Thailand's skepticism about Cambodia's sincerity. It's not just a word they're throwing around. It's a demand for something tangible, for action. That's exactly why senior Thai officials like acting PM Phumtham and even the former finance minister Korpsak, they came out publicly emphasizing this need for demonstrable sincerity and readiness for immediate bilateral talks to actually figure out the details, the measures for the ceasefire. They weren't just after an agreement in principle. They needed to see the shooting stop and a real willingness to negotiate the practical stuff. And if you dig a bit deeper, the history here goes way back, like a century. It's this complicated border dispute that comes from, well, incomplete and sometimes unclear French colonial maps, often focused around these ancient Khmer temples and the land right around them. These fuzzy old borders, plus the huge cultural and strategic importance of the temples, troop movements, or even modern things like drone flights. It can all reignite tensions really, really fast. It kind of shows the challenge isn't just stopping the bullets right now, but tackling these really deep-seated historical issues, these perceived violations, and this persistent distrust that's been building for generations.
Right. So on one side, you have this dramatic, seemingly out-of-the-blue intervention by Trump, appearing to just cut through all the usual delays. But on the other side, it's clear the conflict has this long, messy history. And this wasn't the first try at mediation either. In fact, just the day before Trump's announcement, Thailand's foreign minister, Marisol Giampong, actually said publicly that Thailand didn't need any mediation from a third country. And you also had Malaysian PM Anwar Ibrahim offering to mediate earlier. Hun Manet said Cambodia agreed to that. But then Thailand apparently postponed it, specifically mentioning that same lack of sincerity we keep talking about. It sort of paints a picture of a region maybe a bit wary of outside involvement, but then here comes Trump with a totally different tactic.
Yeah, what's really striking is how Trump's approach, unconventional, very personalized, is such a contrast to those more traditional diplomatic ways. Those earlier offers, like from Malaysia, were more about providing, good offices, bringing people together to talk, standard diplomacy. Trump, though, he brought in this direct, very tangible economic threat or leverage with those tariffs about to hit. And that seems to have let him just bypass the usual bureaucratic steps, maybe bypass national pride issues, and that cautious diplomatic dance. He could exert this unique outside pressure in a way maybe a conventional diplomat couldn't. His specific type of leverage, by tying the conflict directly to trade access and huge financial penalties, it created this undeniable immediate incentive that just seemed to cut through all the hesitation and distrust. A very blunt instrument, you could say, but maybe in this specific case, it appears to have been effective, at least initially.
And that's not the only battleground complicating things, is it? It's not just the physical border or the diplomatic talks. We're also seeing what some people call a war of words just raging online on social media between Thais and Cambodians. How does that play into this whole high-stakes situation?
Well, that's a huge factor. And it's often kind kind of underestimated in modern conflicts. That online battleground, which has been going on for years, really, it reflects these incredibly deep societal tensions and historical arguments. And it's not just people venting. It puts enormous public pressure on the leaders. You see these narratives online from both sides, often using old maps or very nationalistic language, accusing the other side of aggression or, disrespecting their heritage. For instance, you might see Thai users posting historical maps from, say, the early 1900s to back up their claims, while Cambodian users might post pictures of temples they see as absolutely theirs, talking about ancient Kairos history. This digital war really shows how complex modern conflicts are. They affect the top-level negotiations, sure, but they also deeply shape public opinion and national feeling. Any peace deal, no matter how fast the leaders agree, faces intense scrutiny and often really heated debate online. So negotiators aren't just dealing with governments anymore. They're dealing with millions of citizens online expressing very strong opinions, which can either help build support for peace or actually do the opposite, harden those nationalistic feelings and undermine the whole effort. It's a constant balancing act.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up what we've unpacked in this deep dive, we've seen this really surprising, very sudden agreement in principle for a ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia. We've definitely highlighted Donald Trump's central, very forceful economic role in making that happen, tied directly to that fast-approaching August 1st tariff deadline. And we've also touched on these underlying century-old historical issues and border disputes that keep bubbling up, making sure that even a quick deal is clouded by suspicion and this real need for sincerity from both sides. It's a really complex mix of immediate pressures and these deep historical fault lines.
Indeed. And given that direct, maybe unconventional economic pressure that was used, right alongside this incredibly long and tangled history of border problems, it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? How much can one well-timed, perhaps unusual intervention really achieve in the long run? Is it going to lead to genuine lasting peace by sort of forcing a breakthrough on these really tough, entrenched issues? Or is it maybe just a temporary pause, driven mostly by needing to avoid those immediate financial hits, potentially leaving all those underlying historical and territorial problems just sitting there unresolved, ready to flare up again down the road? It's definitely a pause in the fighting, but you have to ask, is it really a foundation for true, lasting reconciliation?
Thanks for watching, everyone. This is a tense moment for both Thailand and Cambodia, and with Trump's call for a ceasefire, the world is watching closely. Let's hope this push for peace works.